3-0, NTD 212, com check.
DPS, go. Inco, go. PUS, go. Surgeon, go. Booster, go. Copy that. We have a go from you guys.
This is Talking Sound.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talking Sound podcast, the only podcast on the internet where -10 is a number to be desired. Coming at you live from the throbbing heart of rock and roll, that is Austin, Texas. Today on the podcast, you may notice this groovy little window right here. Right here. We're going to do a little bit of tech work today, everybody. We're actually going to go over microphones, the thing that makes this show happen. Sure, we have video incorporated, but without this beautiful little Shure microphone right here, this SM57, we would have absolutely nothing. I have numerous other microphones. That's what we're going to take a look at today, really talk about their uses, applications, ins and outs of them, frequencies, things like that. So let's get started. To start off with, well, we do have a Shure SH55 from the Vintage series. It's a standard vocal microphone. You can use it for instruments and stuff. It's really a lot better on the vocal end of things. Kind of gives a classic tone, not a whole lot of real high-end crisp response. More in the low mids and mid-range for people like me who have very sibilant S's. Very plosive P's, though, are an issue with this microphone. So you really kind of have to watch that. A lot of that has to really do with mic technique. Not all of us are microphone performers full-time, but we do know some tricks about, you know, keeping mics off axis, not talking directly into them, trying to soften your puzz and your S's a little bit. So from there, let's move on. Let's continue with some dynamic microphones. Here is a very common one. This is the Shure SM57. This is a Shure SM57. It's commonly used for guitar, instrumentation. A lot of horn sections use them. I personally like an SM57 for vocal use. Once again, it's a little bit tweaked toward the instrument side, so it's got a little bit of a high-end roll-off compared to its brother, the SM58. They're really both the same capsule, but there's a slight frequency response difference between the two. And I find that live, this does my vocals a little bit better and accentuates my bass without me having to roll bass into it. Also, there are numerous people who use it to kind of get rid of their honky tone in their voice. People like Tom Petty use them. Another one that comes to mind offhand is Elton John. It really provides a nice, smooth sound from the SM58. And let's take a quick look. Speaking of the 58, here's the two of them side by side. Here's the SM58. Here's the SM57. And as you can see, you know, they both really, if you look, have the same polar response, everything else. They're both just about the same in construction. And the plus side to that is that they're very easily identifiable. But the one thing to notice is that you know, the way that they're wired inside is utterly simplistic and pretty resistant to just about anything. You can see right here that it's epoxied in, and there's really only two connections, so there's not really a whole lot to mess up. And the SM58 is ubiquitous for vocals. I mean, I can't say I've ever worked a club that did not have SM58s in stock, didn't have them there. These are just about what every band starts off with at some point, either that or the PG48. I've seen frequently from people. It was a very popular microphone for Musician's Friend for a long time and online catalogs. And it's a lower version of the 58, and it also has a toggle switch on it. It's very easily identifiable. The grill is different, and the assemblage is different as well, the way that the grill screws on. So that is the 57 and 58 series from Shure. Let's take a look now at another one that's a little bit more recent from Shure. This is actually the Beta series. And you can tell the Beta Series 58 and the Beta Series 57s by this awesome little blue stripe. That makes it very easy to tell on stage. Also under stage lighting, you can tell there's a distinct color difference. The 58A has a little bit of a bluish tinge to it as opposed to the flat metal, the gunmetal black that the typical Shures are. And these are very crisp, very great response on the mic. On vocals, they're fantastic. They sing on horns. I do find that they tend to be a little bit more feedback ridden because they're a little bit hotter. They're wound a little bit tighter, so they're slightly hotter than their typical 58s. And the frequency response is markedly different between the two. So I use the 58 just as much as the 58A, but I really use the 58A for certain applications, especially in the studio. So I use that a lot more for studio use where I have a much greater control over sound. I want my mics live typically to be a little bit more forgiving on things like feedback, such as that, depending on if I'm working a house system or if I'm working my system. So that's some examples. Along those lines is another one from Audax. Now, these are all cardioid microphones, and the main thing to remember about that is their polar pattern. Their polar pattern is shaped, if you look here, you can see right here on this SM57, this nifty little mark right there. That is what the polar pattern looks like. So you can see where it picks up a little bit on the back end of the microphone as well. These have a little bit tighter cardioid pattern on them. It's a little bit more like this. So these are really good, these OM2s by Audax. I find them great for instruments on stage. They have right up around the same response as a 57. And it's just another option in the dynamic range of microphones that are out there whenever you're talking just straight cardioid pattern standard mics. This here is a vintage. This is actually an old realistic microphone. This is one of my favorites that I use. I actually found this at a where was it? It was at a thrift shop in the bulk bin for $1.50, and brought it home, did a couple solder points on it, and it works just fine. It's great. It gets this really gritty sound to it, and really thick, good sound for what it is. But you got to be ready for something to kind of sound a little bit tin canny at the same time. So, you know, every microphone has its own voice. They all, because of the fact that they're wound copper around magnets, much like individual pickups for guitars have their own sound because of the way that they're wound, because of the thickness of the wire, because of how many wraps are around the post. It is the exact same thing with microphones. Not many people actually understand the fact that microphones are really speakers wired in reverse. It's a diaphragm that's pushing a coil of wire around a magnet, and whenever it's doing that, it's picking up the frequency and transmitting it and turning that motion across it into power the same way that spinning a magnet around a wire creates an inductive force, and we can have power from generators. A generator is really a motor running in reverse. So if you think about it that way, a microphone is technically a speaker in reverse. So interesting little fact there. Moving on, let's get into a couple other interesting microphones here. This here is by EV, and this is the dynamic Supercardioid, and the pattern on this is fantastic. It is big, it's wide. It is a ND468 by EV is what this is, and I use this specifically on horns. I actually had a band for a long time, Shakuhachi Jones, that incorporated bamboo flutes. And this was fantastic for those. Fantastic. It got a lot of frequency response out of it with very little feedback. So you can really, it's got a good hot wind on it, and you can keep the gain really low and get good, crisp, clear sound out of it. It's a fantastic microphone. Now, you really have to remember that whenever you're choosing microphones, you have to think about the purposes. You really, really have to think about the reason that you are using the microphone. Are you using it to capture guitar and vocals, instrumentation, like the microphones that we've been looking at here? Those are specifically used for that purpose. You can also use them on drums. I've used 57s to mic toms all day long. Same thing with snares, top and bottom. We can get into microphone techniques later, and that would be a great episode, actually. Right now, we're really talking more about their general applications and what you would use them for. So we've seen cardioid, supercardioid. Here are a couple examples of interesting microphones that I've personally built. These are actually, this is a carbon microphone, actually like what used to be in an old telephone receiver. And basically the way this operates is that you have bits of carbon or graphite that are over a magnet, and they react to the vibration, and their activity around the magnet is what creates the sound. So if you remember how old telephones sound a little bit gritty and, you know, very megaphony, that is exactly what this attains, and it's designed exactly to do that. This is actually, though, because of the way it is, it actually has to have a preamp driving it. Most of these microphones that we're dealing with, the 57, the 58A, things like that, they don't have to have a dedicated power source, per se. They operate off of very low voltage, and they don't have to have what's called phantom power activated. Phantom power is basically where you add voltage to the signal. Now remember, the principle that microphones act under, they're generating a small voltage themselves already. They're already generating that by that coil moving over the magnet. Remember, we're generating that magnetic force, we're generating that electromagnetic field, we are generating that power for the microphone by moving the diaphragm. Some things like this, because they don't have a diaphragm, actually require you to be providing voltage to it. So by providing voltage to it, that is where we start, you know, allowing the sound to come through. Here is the other microphone that was built from the same telephone. This is actually Mylar. This is the speaker element, and because it's the speaker element, it already has a microphone, it already has a magnet, it already has a coil, and it already has the Mylar, the diaphragm, to push that coil over the magnet. So this does not necessitate having a preamp on it. It already generates its own sound. So there are a few of those. And a little bit of explanation, whenever you see up at the top of your mixing console that plus 48 button, you don't have to have it on if you're using a standard microphone. If you're using a dynamic, cardioid, supercardioid, doesn't matter. As long as it's a dynamic microphone, that dynamic means that it is dynamically creating the voltage that is making the sound. So you don't need to worry about that on that end. Now, some microphones, however, do require you to include that extra voltage with them. And those microphones are called phantom power microphones or active microphones. Here's an example of one of those. This is actually a pressure zone microphone made by Realistic. I love this thing. I've had it since I was like 19 years old. They used to sell them at Radio Shack, and they don't anymore. And they, for $25 back in the day, man, you could get some real studio quality room reverb sound off of one of these. These are used specifically, it says PZM, that means pressure zone. Now, what that means is this is a flat microphone. You see, it's absolutely flat right here. And the element is inside of this little notch right here that the sound reflects off of this plate and goes into there and is absorbed. And you can see here that there is off, standby, and on. This is actually a battery pack that lets you power it with a AA battery. This is not a full-on professional grade microphone. You can see here that it's got a 1/4 inch. It's got an unbalanced connection, not a balanced XLR. Balanced basically means that there is a route to there is an additional signal path there that alters that provides another source to ground, so you actually have 2 phases for the power instead of just one, and it keeps things from getting ground loops, hums, things like that. So this is a little bit more prone to hum than my other one that I have that is full-on XLR. But this is basically used for, you can use it for tabletops, for conferences, to make sure that you're picking up everybody on this side of the microphone. I've used it before whenever I've done live recording of tap dancing, things like that, dance recitals. It's great because you actually pick up the motion of the feet. You can actually pick up the sound of the stage by this resonating against it. This is also used for room miking. Whenever you do drum tracks, you can put it on the far wall from the room and get a nice ambient sound reflected off of the wall across from the drum kit. So there are some applications for what's called a pressure zone microphone. Once again, this one's by Realistic. This is another example of what's a powered microphone, something that requires voltage to operate. Without that AA battery there, without that 1.5 volts, that microphone would do absolutely nothing. It would not function. It wouldn't work at all. So very, very important things to remember. As we get into other things like that, let's take a look at this here is a condenser lapel microphone. And you can see here this has a small battery compartment on it as well. This takes a standard hearing aid battery to provide the voltage. And you can see here that the capsule is extraordinarily small. Very, very small. It's a lapel microphone. What's basically happening is that you can see here exactly how big it is in comparison. I mean, here is the clip. So you can tell it's very tiny. I mean, there's my pinky in comparison, and it's smaller than that. So those are basically used for very up-close miking of things, you know, vocals, things like that. You see them wearing on the news all the time, and they wear them in churches, environments where basically you're looking for more a PA, more of a public address type of work. You wouldn't necessarily use it for vocals in a studio or anything like that, but you could easily use it for video recording, that kind of application. You could also use it for miking very small things. I've actually taken these and strapped them right next to the bridge of a violin, and they get great sound like that because they can pick up the F hole and everything else in a very close, tight environment. So a few applications of a lavalier lapel microphone here that is also a condenser microphone. Condenser microphones are the ones that require phantom power and are designed to pick up very sensitive sounds. Here's another example of a condenser mic right here. This is actually by MXL. This one has definitely seen its wear and tear in my studio, but this is a large diaphragm microphone. And this also requires phantom power. It requires 48 volts. That's what the little button is on your soundboard. So if you're looking to use large diaphragm microphones, studio microphones, things like that, that is exactly what the application is for phantom power, is to provide that extra voltage to the large diaphragm or to the very sensitive diaphragm that's there, normally some sort of metallic surface. This is actually a gold sputtered diaphragm. It's a large cylindrical disc that is sputtered with gold and has very small holes in it for air to escape through and is extraordinarily sensitive. I use this one specifically for some overheads at one point, and it got crushed a couple times. Fortunately, it was just the grill. The microphone is still fine. I use it for miking other things now, guitars, things like that. So it gets a little bit less wear and tear than it did in the live recording days when I was doing a lot of rehearsal space demos. But basically, the purpose for these is to be able to capture a wide frequency. Wide diaphragm microphones allow you to capture a wide frequency of sound, everything from low end to high end, and it's used to get large definition, big sound out of something, where you've got something that's going from low to high and has a lot of dynamic range, like the human voice, drum sets, things like that. That is exactly the purpose for these microphones right here. Now, along those lines, let's get into one more. Here is actually a pencil condenser. This is a condenser microphone. Here's a smaller one. This one right here is actually by Digital Reference. It's an overhead microphone designed specifically for drums. It has those specific frequency ranges for cymbals and drums. This right here is a microphone by Rode. You can see here on its little fuzzy, by Rode. And this microphone is actually what goes on top of a camera or in a boom microphone for video recording. This can also be used for field recording. This is a great field recording microphone. It's got a hyperdynamic, so it is pointed. It's out, way out into the distance. I mean, you can really spotlight some sound with this and get some things done that you wouldn't be able to do with the standard microphone. It's uber sensitive to sound, so it picks up every little nuance. I've literally gotten birds walking on branches with this thing. I mean, it is so entirely sensitive. It's great. And this microphone by Rode, actually, if you see here, you can see this small little divot in the microphone where you can roll off. You see where it's flat and then there's a little angled part. That angled part, if you flip that switch up, will actually act as a low-end roll-off. So if you're getting a lot of rumble from wind, things like that, even with the foamy on there, you can still flip that switch and be able to roll off the frequencies that you don't want. Now on that right, here's a larger one by Rode that actually has, if you notice right here, the option of being able to go from narrow and normal, a normal range, to telescoping. So the sound comes more out of the front than on the sides. And the great thing about this microphone that I love is that it's actually battery powered. Inside is a AA battery right here. And man, it's great because you don't have to bring something that's phantom powered. You don't have to bring this other microphone. Is awesome, and it's a little bit more sensitive, but the problem is you have to have phantom power on the device. So on your camera or something like that, a lot of times I don't like to bring, like my big camera with the XLR input, so I'll bring this microphone with me. That way I can use something that's battery powered, more throw and go, be able to just get what I need to get and move on down the line. Now, one more option for studio work. This is one of my big hosses. This is one of the biggest purchases I've ever made as far as gear goes. And it is a beautiful, beautiful microphone by AKG. And this microphone, the XLS series, it is a C414B, the C414B. And you can see here that you actually have different decibel ranges that you can choose. You have different frequency roll-offs. that you can choose. So whenever you hit that and select it, you can change from a 0 frequency roll-off to a 40 hertz roll-off to a 80 hertz and really get rid of those plosive Ps and pops, things like that. You can even go as high as 160. And on the back, you can see right here is the selector switch where you can get numerous patterns. You can get full pattern, you can get cardioid, hypercardioid, super hypercardioid. You can get figure 8 pattern where it picks up on both sides of the microphone, left and right. And this microphone is just whiz bang, whiz bang, whiz bang. I bring this whenever I have real studio sessions going on, and I'm going to be in a silent environment. That is how sensitive this microphone is. Even with the gain set super low, it hears everything. Like it will hear the cilia in your ear moving to hear it. It's so sensitive. It's crazy sometimes. I've literally had to A/B things with my headphones and take them on and take them off and going, that's crazy. You have to be in a completely silent environment to use this. There is no forgiveness on it whatsoever, which is a great thing because that means it is utterly transparent. It is as beautiful sound as you can get, so much so that it lives in a velvet bag as opposed to most of my others that live in foam casing. This one actually has a place of honor and doesn't get pulled out or live with other microphones unless it is being used for that. Now, that's just a primer, y'all. That is just what, on my way out the door, that I could get together and just pull. So the world of microphones is so large, so large. It goes all the way from microphones that you can wear in your hair for theater to microphones that pick up things a quarter mile away to, I mean, it's amazing. The panoply of microphones that is out there. And remember, much like everything else, research your microphone. Research what your uses are going to be. Research what applications you're going to be using it for. And make sure that you're getting a microphone that is proper for the application and that you're also getting a microphone that is good enough for your uses. Make sure that it will put up with you. That's the most important thing. Make sure that it will put up with you. If you know that you're rough on your gear, read the reviews on your gear. Make sure that you get something that people say is roadworthy, that, you know, they have not had problems with. So, and if they drop it, like the MXL here, once again, it's been banged around, but I read the reviews and it was a hoss. It could put up with it. And sure enough, man, it's been beat before. It's been whacked and the microphone stand moved around because it was hit so hard with the drumstick, but it still beats strong to this day. So considering that, that's about it for this episode, y'all. Please stop by the website. Keep up with this. We have some great new articles from MXL, actually, from Mogami, all kinds of microphone makers, distributors. The new Shure series is out, the new series of the SH, and boy, it is beautiful. I really want to get one to show here on air because the frequency response is beautiful, beautiful. I love it on this, but it is even more sensitive and fantastic. So, on that note, everybody, please go to the website, www.talkingsoundshow.com. There on the website, you can see everything. We have videos, we have audio, we have live production, we have technical articles written by distributors that we have permission to repost. Go to the donate page there. Help us out, y'all. This whole mission is free for everybody. The knowledge is free. I don't want to have membership fees or anything like that. We have an app that we've developed. We're ready to bring that about. So on the donate page, that'll take you to the Patreon site. And our Patreon website is www.patreon.com/talkingsound. And there you can see the different campaigns, from the monthly maintenance campaign that it takes to keep the lights on here, to the fundraiser for the app, to fundraisers for new gear. All kinds of campaigns are going on there. You can also visit us on YouTube and check out the video streams of what happens right here in the studio, see the microphones we were just talking about, see different tutorials that we're working on, all kinds of stuff. Go to YouTube, look for Talking Sound Show on YouTube. We're also available now on SoundCloud, so please go to soundcloud.com/Talking Sound. We're also on Spreaker. Spreaker.com/Talking Sound Podcast. Those two were special requests by y'all, the listeners. So believe me, whenever we get suggestions, we listen to them. People ask to have them more available until we get an app up. So there you have it. You can now go on to SoundCloud and Spreaker and download them right there on your favorite podcast sources. We also have our Facebook. Please come friend us on Facebook, facebook.com/Talking Sound Show. We're also on Twitter @Talking Sound. So once again, everybody, I am Chris Jordan, your host for the Talking Sound Podcast. This episode has been about microphones. Soon we will have in-studio sessions, all kinds of fun stuff going on. So stay tuned to the podcast. And until next time, keep reaching for 11, everybody. Take care.
This is Talking Sound.